Welcome to this session. We'll be talking about gaining leadership of a training group in this presentation. And so things we want to talk about here. In the early stages of a training program, the group needs to see you as a strong leader. And so we'll talk about setting group norms, controlling the timing and the pacing of the program, getting the group's attention, making sure that we're winning receptiveness to your message, and dealing with problem participants. These are all key areas in gaining leadership within a group. So it's best off if you do this early on in the training program. That will save you having to go back and put in place some things that you might be uncomfortable with, and for your trainees may be uncomfortable with you or your students that you're training because you kind of let the thing slide at the beginning. So at the forefront of your program, of your teaching or training, it's better that you appear to be a strong leader and that your participants see you like that in that light instead of having to go back later and try and tighten things up. First, we're going to look at gaining leadership of your active training program. First thing you want to do is set group norms. At the beginning, you'll want to encourage your participants to express themselves honestly. Let them know that open expression, ideas and concerns and attitudes are really appreciated and does enhance the overall learning process. You'll get to know each other and hear their different experiences and stories. It really builds a good rapport within the group and the sense of trust we talked about in an earlier presentation. Also, ask that confidentiality be respected. Let the participants know that what everyone says during a session is to remain confidential. And conversations about people outside the training shouldn't be discussed to others once the session is over. What stays here, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So that will just help build the trust once again. This one is a little tricky, but especially for you more timid participants, I think it's really critical that you urge risk taking and that you reward risk taking when you urge. So a training session is a lot of times it's just a unique opportunity for participants to step away from the usual roles and responsibility and doing things in a different way, for example. So encourage participants to use the training area where they're at and the environment to their advantage by taking risks they wouldn't normally consider. Whether that's doing a project or setting up a simulation in a different way that's not protocol per se, but try to do things differently. Expect participation from everyone. Remind participants that when they hold back, this becomes more difficult. More and more time goes on if they're not participating at the front end. Tell them you have planned opening exercises to encourage participation, icebreakers, and that type of activities. Promote value of performance feedback. So let them know that they are expected to give feedback to each other. We do that in some of the courses that I teach, in peer review assignments, for example. Require participants to sit in different spots so that way they'll be able to meet different people. And if you're in an online area, put them in different groups for different assignments. If you're doing group assignments, that can be a very good way to do that as well. Reassure participants that questions are welcome. Let them know you expect them to ask questions whenever they're confused and to speak up when they don't understand something. And then obviously, insist on punctuality. If you're in a live environment or if you're doing a synchronous presentation in an online course, you want them to be able to be there to start and end on time. That respects everyone's time and set the group's norms. I want to talk a little bit about how to help you increase receptivity to your leadership. We talked a little bit about this already in one of the earlier sessions. The way we talk to our adult participants makes a big difference in how receptive they'll be. So if you talk down to them in a pedagogical model rather than an andragogical as a peer, they're going to respond in that way to you. So try to use some of these approaches to win your participants over. Convey respect and appreciation for them. Share what you will have in common as a group and with the individual learners. If you're interacting with them in a one-on-one situation, for example, phrase your advice and directives indirectly so you're not singling out one person. Or they feel like they would be put on the spot, for example. You could more or less open it up for discussion and get people involved. State what's positive about participants' contrary viewpoints in the open discussions, if you're having one of those. Encourage disagreement, it's healthy, and allow people to defend and argue their side. Conveying a desire for collaboration is really critical, especially with the millennials. Collaboration is a big component of 21st century learning. Here are just a couple of keys as you think about gaining leadership of your training and your teaching areas with your group. Keys to establishing and maintaining control. We'll look at prevention and intervention. And we've talked a little bit about prevention from the first part of this presentation where we set the group norms. Just remind them what the group norms are and what things will be tolerated and what won't be tolerated in your classroom or teaching training area. And on the next slide, I've got a few examples of how intervention may look in a training situation. So let's look at that now. Here we'll look at some examples for intervention to help you gain leadership of your training group. Some of the things to think through are, if you've got people are just constantly asking questions, for example, maybe you say, hey, please hold your questions for a few moments. Let's talk about this, or let's listen to the presentation first. Maybe their question will actually be answered as you're covering your material, your content. Another thing you may want to say is, I think it might be helpful for us to agree that people should speak only for themselves rather than in generalities. So sort of incriminating the whole group in one statement. Or maybe it's an issue of diversity or ethnicity or race or something of that nature, or different cultures. Another area example may be, let's just have one comment per person for now so that everyone has a chance to speak. So you've been in those situations, I'm sure, where you have a person who tends to monopolize the conversations that are going on between the teacher, instructor, or trainer, leader of the group, and the rest of the group. So you want to be careful. Make sure that you allow everyone to have an opportunity. Try to build on each other's ideas. Hey, maybe let's carry this a bit further. What do you guys think about that? And how else could we apply this in this area? So try to build on those types of ideas. You see how that can be done, especially in an online environment with a discussion thread or group discussions. And when you go into your groups, you might say something like, I ask you to listen to the opinions of each members before getting into further discussion. So allow everyone to have a chance to say what they think before someone speaks out their opinion. And then everybody else was kind of like, okay, if they didn't agree with that, maybe they would be timid or shy and keep from sharing what they really believe and feel. So prevention and intervention are really good keys to helping you maintain and gain that leadership of a group. Prevention is really critical.